We did close to $1 million our first month. We did a collaboration with Noah Schnapp. He was Will in Stranger Things. Wow, why would you give away 90%? 7,000 shoes arrived to the Amazon warehouse. I was the quote-unquote NFT guy. 6 months later, we had a deal with Snoop Dogg. I didn't know anything about designing shoes. So I've been meaning to start documenting more of my life. And I keep coming up with excuses, you know? I always don't have the script right. I need to research more. I need to think through more. When I'm 80 or 90 or 100 or whenever I'm on my deathbed, I would love to be able to reflect on my life. And I also know that by the time I'm 80, 90 or 100, my memory's not gonna be very good. Chances are it's gonna be pretty bad. So I don't want to remember part of it. I want to remember the whole thing. I have to authentically document. I have to share the things that I would want to look back on in 60 years or 7 years or whatever it is. I'm not doing it for anyone else besides me, and that's a good thing to note. So the first thing that I want to share is just something that recently happened. We, about 3 years ago, started a brand called Drifts. The whole idea, I mean, essentially it launched on Amazon last week. We did, from a sales standpoint, close to $1 million our first month. We did a collaboration with Noah Schnapp. So if you've watched Stranger Things, he was Will in Stranger Things. I want to dive into the early days, how the idea formed, why we decided doing a collaboration with Noah Schnapp over others was a good idea, how we ended up doing the launch exclusively with Amazon. I want to talk about how we made a deal with a relatively high profile name like Noah Schnapp. You know, he's not Leonardo DiCaprio, but he's a decent size, 20 million or so on Instagram and some more on TikTok, and how we actually got that to happen. What were some of the ups and some of the downs throughout the process? It all started back in the crypto NFT days, believe it or not. End of 2020, beginning of 2021. I was, as I always am, really experimenting with new technology, was fascinated by NFTs in general, way before it became mainstream. By the time the world started paying attention to NFTs, I was kind of already the quote-unquote NFT guy. Specifically, I remember an old business partner, Brendan Kane, reaching out to me because a lot of his traditional Hollywood connections were reaching out to him. I ended up getting in touch with Snoop Dogg's manager, and 6 months later, we had a deal with Snoop Dogg and Sandbox, which was a metaverse, kind of the bigger metaverse platform of the time. That ended up being a very big success financially. We did $10 million in sales very quickly, within the first 2 drops, NFT drops. It was very successful. And part of that, I had some press. I was a part of the official press release. And I started to get some credibility in the NFT space. By the time Beeple had done his $69 million sale, that's really when the whole world started paying attention. And that's when a lot of the inbound started flooding in. And I don't remember if at the time I had already launched with Snoop Dogg or I was about to or in the process, but being early gave me the opportunity, it put me in the position to being seen as an authority, which allowed me to close deals that I otherwise, to be honest, would not have been able to close. If you're early to something and you can establish authority, you don't have to establish authority with millions of people on a YouTube channel or something, but simply with the right people in your network, you can really put amazing things together. Noah's manager, Mo, was told what I did with Snoop Dogg, was introduced to me by Brendan Kane, and was interested in doing something with Noah in the NFT space. And I asked, in my mind, the first thing that I think about is like, we want to make this authentic. We don't want to make this just another bullshit NFT launch. Like, we want it to be unique and cool and aligned with what Noah cares about. And I asked him, what does Noah care about? And there were two things that he was really passionate about outside of acting. One was chocolate, and the other was shoes. And at the time, it was interesting. I mean, I didn't have a lot of experience with shoes, but shoes were actually, there was a brand called Artifacts, which at the time was a standalone brand. It had since then gotten acquired by Nike and then shut down by Nike. But that was the first thing that came to mind. It's like, oh, there's a playbook here. There are not a lot of shoe brands, really, I mean, only one that's successful, and they're doing some interesting things when it comes to digital physical. I was not interested in just doing digital shoes. I wanted to do a physical product. And I think if I remember correctly at the time, that was an early trend that I had recognized. So, a lot of people were doing NFTs. Most of the NFTs obviously lost value because it was purely based on speculation. So there was a shift to you need a utility, or you need some sort of other value outside of just the digital collectible. Noah has a big name, big reach. At the time, there weren't a lot of big celebrities in the NFT space. And they were, obviously pouring in after some high profile names like Snoop Dogg, did launches, but it still wasn't to the point where every celebrity was rushing and trying to do a cash grab. So I pitched the idea to Mo, Noah's manager. Mo pitched it to Noah, and Noah really liked it. So we got an agreement down, and we were off to the races. Now, something really interesting happened, what I call a synchronicity, a serendipitous moment. I happened to have a meeting with a guy by the name of Eyal Baumel. I had known him for a couple of years. He was in the creator management space. He was the CEO of a company called Eula, which managed 10,000 YouTubers at the time. And it was the personal manager of Nastia, which at the time I think was the number 1 or number 2 highest subscribed to YouTuber. 7-year-old girl, spoke 6 languages, had 100 million subscribers back then, or 150. I think now she's got 200 or something. But I'm talking to him, and I told him, about this project I was getting started, and he's like, oh, that's interesting, because I've also been thinking about an idea in the same space. I have a big creator network, and I think there's a hole in the market and an opportunity to build shoes around big YouTubers and creators and celebrities. So I had a decision to make. One, I can just do the whole thing on my own, keep 100% of the equity, and spend quite a bit of time and, take on all the responsibility. Or I could partner up with someone that knows how to operate, has experience, is trustworthy, had a good reputation. At the time, I was building up my own brand in the Web3 space. I had co-founded also a separate company called Ready Player DAO with a bunch of guys. That's a story for another time. And it's shit, do I want to take all of this on myself, or do I want to lean into this really random serendipitous moment? And that's what I ended up deciding on. So Eyal and I came to an agreement where he would have 90% of the brand, and I would have 10% of the brand. And my 10% would come in from, one, obviously being the one who brought Noah, advising and being more high level along the way. So him and I co-founded the brand together, and we're off to the races. Some people may think, wow, why would you give away 90%? You had that deal in the bag. You could have kept 100%. But I think over the years, my philosophy has been, I've become more and more self-aware of what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. And one thing I genuinely love is creating, going from 0 to 1. I love having an idea. I have a million ideas. But the reality is, when you've done enough things, you realize that running a company takes a lot of time. Not everyone is built like Elon Musk. Let's just lean into the part that you love, which is the incubation process. And that's what I did. And, looking back on it, obviously, the reality is I'm so happy I made that decision. Let's just say you're a creative person. You have attributes of an artist. You love bringing a bunch of ideas to life, but you're faced with the realities of the friction in the physical world of really making a business successful. There is a path, I've realized, to expressing that need of creation in the form of businesses without all of the pressure and all of the responsibility being on you to operate it in a day-to-day. What came next? Well, we had the shoe design and manufacturing process, and we had obviously then the distribution process. So first things first is let's design this shoe. I didn't know anything about designing shoes. Al didn't know anything about designing shoes, but what do we do? Let's reach out to our network and find the people that are highly recommended, that have spent their years, many years, specializing in that specific area, and get them on a call. So Mo, Noah's manager, happened to already be having a conversation with a founder of a brand called MLO. This guy named Clayton, who was in the shoe business, had his own shoe line, and turns out he was the right guy for the job. Look at the reviews now on Amazon, and we're very highly rated. We're at like a 4.9 or something, like very close to 5 stars. Obviously it's early days, and who knows how that changes, but like the shoe quality is great. And there's tons of ups and downs and hiccups that happen in the manufacturing process. You have an initial design, and then you send that design to your manufacturing partner, in this case Clayton. He tells you, hey, this can be done, this can't be done. He then works with the factory to make the initial sample, and that process goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until we have a product that looks good, feels good. Initially we had 5 or 6 different colors that we wanted, all of which that Noah loved, and then we decided on 2 color SKUs as opposed to 5 or 6. One called the Night Owl, which is black and blue, and then another called Early Bird, which was a white shoe, white and blue. And that's what we did. On that note, I think one of the bigger lessons in this whole experience is like, it's one thing to have this kind of incubation mindset where you are being more responsible for bringing an idea to life and bringing the right people in, but you better know how to choose the right people. And that is I think that's a skill. It's a little bit harder to teach. You almost just have to like go through it. It has become a core strength of mine, because for me to go and do the execution, 99% of the time it's not going to happen. Like, I need to pull in people that can actually bring the idea to life, bring the vision to life, people that specialize. And I think there's a certain percentage of people out there that are just wired more for being the strategist, the visionary, and less doing all of the execution and the hard work to actually bring it to life. The ideas I have, at least from my experience, are ideas that require a wide range of skill sets. And yes, there's always the route of like learning all those skill sets, getting really good at them, and being able to just like manage your time really well and do it all yourself. That's not me. So, early days, I had to get really, really good at finding the right people to onboard, knowing how to manage resources, knowing how to, I guess, budget. I don't know if there's probably a better word for budget, because I still don't think I'm a great budgeter, but just understanding like how much you can spend, what people do you have in your network that would be interested in something like this? Are people truly motivated? What kind of team player are they? How much do they expect from a payment standpoint? Are they kind of entrepreneurial and self-motivated? Over time, you just start to learn patterns and learn how to identify who's going to be good and who's not. I'm very fortunate and lucky that I was able to identify Eyal as someone that was worth building this with, because he is a fucking machine. He's really, really good at being an operator and managing people and negotiating. I would say negotiating is this very strong suit, and that became a very important part of phase 2, which is really the distribution and how we were able to do $900,000 on our first order. When it comes to the distribution, which is really how we're going to sell as many shoes as humanly possible. Initially, what we were planning on doing is selling through Noah's social media. So we're going to literally create a brand store. We're going to list that brand site on Noah's social media, Instagram, TikTok, and so on. There was still, opportunity to make a splash in the NFT space. Again, not a lot of competition in the shoe space, even quality digital physical products, really not a lot of competition. Throughout this process, we started to notice more and more celebrities jumping into the space, and a lot of them not really making a good impression. The NFT Web3 culture was very much tight-knit and about the culture, and If you're just coming in, if you're an outsider coming in and just taking your money and running, a lot of people get pissed off because most of these NFTs go to zero. And what happened was celebrity drops became really just not a good look. Not just not in demand, but just actively deterred. And it got to the point where a lot of celebrities that were jumping in, their brands were impacted. You know, people flooding their DMs, complaining about scamming and rug pulling and all these different terms. So we're looking at this and we're like, this is a little bit dangerous. Red flags were going up. We needed to understand how many shoes to buy. Let's just say you go and commit to 1,000 shoes, yet your demand is 5,000. You're losing out on a ton of potential revenue. Worse of a problem, which is you commit to 5,000 shoes, you only sell 1,000. All of a sudden you're sitting on 4,000 shoes, you've wasted a bunch of money, you're in the red, there's no profit. We're looking at this trying to gauge like what is really, how many shoes should we buy? Like what's the demand here? And we're starting to like lose confidence that the NFT space could really drive the demand that we were looking for. So Eyal meets a guy by the name of Dan that makes an introduction to Amazon. Funny enough, Amazon happened to be building out a NFT digital physical marketplace. And they were looking for digital physical brands to partner with that could be kind of part of their flagship initial launch. So Eyal and I, but Eyal really driving the negotiations, end up getting Amazon really excited about this. And they basically committed to being one of the initial flagship brands that we're going to be launching on this digital physical platform. And that's when they committed to 7,000 shoes. We were a little bit concerned, but Amazon seemed to be very confident in their digital platform. So we were kind of going along with it. It's going to be a digital collectible redeemable for a physical shoe. Sure enough, a couple months later, they come to us and say, listen, we're shutting down this digital platform. Let's just do the physical. Great, cool. Like I'm so happy. I was worried about doing a digital shoe because I just knew no one fucking cared for digital. No one cared on Amazon to go and collect a digital collectible of a shoe. They just want the physical shoe. Do they like Noah? Do they like sneakers? Like, do they fit the demographic of someone that would buy this $150 shoe? Like, that's the people that no one's gonna want it because it has a digital collectible on the front of it. But the market was so hyped up and like, you know, obviously Amazon's such a big company. Information probably travels slow and like these signals that we were getting by being in the weeds, we just got it a couple months early. I think on paper at that point, give us the PO, the purchase order. If we need 7,000 shoes, it's going to cost 300 grand or whatever, the final was around 300 grand. We knew that risk was basically eliminated, right? I mean, there's still risk because that's cash out of hand for a couple months, but the risk there is Amazon all of a sudden doesn't want to pay for it and the shoes arrive. But Amazon is a reputable company. They're not going to go bankrupt. Like that risk is very minimal. If we were just like selling on our website only, relying on the traffic from purely Noah and the other influencers we work with, we probably would not have bought 7,000 shoes. We would have maybe done, a couple thousand or something like that, right? So we go back to the factory, we put the PO down, we start production. Of course, during production, like normal, there's always shit that goes on. It's a long story, but tons of problems that we're dealing with, issues with the product, back and forth, last minute things that are coming up. Stitching, is an issue, and creasing is an issue, and certain materials are issues. But the good thing is we solved it. 7,000 shoes arrived to the Amazon warehouse. Amazon hosts us in their studio in LA. We do a shoot with Noah. We shoot the Amazon live. It's a nice 5-10 minute video of Noah talking about the shoes, dressing the shoes with different outfits, talking about his passion for sneakers. We go to Venice Boardwalk. We take a photo shoot. We get a bunch of great content. More issues come up. Launch doesn't work. Conflict with Stranger Things 4 shooting with Noah. Conflict with different promotional periods, heavy promotional periods on Amazon. We ended up pushing the launch date multiple times. It ended up happening. We are now about a week past, and we are basically in the next couple of days, we'll be getting an update on how the brand is actually performing. Because Amazon essentially bought the inventory, they own it. So technically it's their product. As of right now, they custody it. I'm excited to see how the brand performs. And I think the vision of the brand is simple. Like, we see Drifts as a creator launchpad. We want to collaborate with people that inspire us across all different walks of life, whether you're an actor like Noah, or an artist, or a musician, or a content creator, or a YouTuber, or someone makes super entertaining videos like Mr. Beast or whatever it is. Like, we want to be able to give these people a new medium to express themselves, to share their creative ideas and visions and designs. And we want to turn Drifts into a creator launchpad that just brings a bunch of unique collaborations to life, collaborations you cannot find anywhere else in the shoe category. And, at the end of the day, see where it takes us. Maybe we end up getting into other items outside of shoes, but that's the idea. I personally, looking back on it, love this role of being involved as I want. And obviously I'm incentivized to make my 10% worth something, and I can continue on with other businesses and other ideas I'm working on. This is a path where you can spend 10% of your time bringing ideas to life, bringing businesses to life, and really focus on what you enjoy, which is that 0 to 1 process, bringing the team together, solidifying the vision, and getting people excited to bring it to life. Really talented people that are smarter than me to get together and bring an idea to life. It's been super exciting. It's been a great experience overall. And I would say I'm super fortunate and grateful that it happened. And I think it's going to lead to many other interesting opportunities and ideas. A lot more room to grow, obviously, with the brand Drifts. And I think it's going to also create other opportunities in the creator monetization space. So we'll see what happens, but it's been a lot of work and I'm very happy with how it all turned out. I'm glad that I finally was able to sit my ass down and brain dump one of the projects that I was a part of. So I'm very curious for anyone that actually stuck through to the end. I would love to hear from you on what you liked, what you didn't like, and if my rant inspired any ideas for you. Appreciate you listening. Hopefully I will be able to tune in more frequently and just share more and not be such a perfectionist. It'd be an amazing thing to look back on in 50, 60, 70 years at hundreds of these videos, right? It also would be a cherry on top if these videos happen to have some sort of impact, inspire someone to bring their own ideas to life. So appreciate it, and see you in the next video.